funny enough, I recorded a video a few weeks back, which I think just went up, I don't know, last week maybe, I don't know, whenever, that I would not be recording very many videos coming up because I didn't have a lot of stuff coming. But then I had an opportunity to turn in some old books and get some credit at McKay. That's what it's called, right? Yeah, McKay Used Books in Manassas, Virginia. It's kind of a haul, so it's not somewhere that I go very often. And in fact, I think I took out a bunch of books maybe last year around this time and got some credit and made a big purchase, which I did a video about. So anyway, got out there this time and had some pretty good luck finding some stuff. I actually got decent money for the stuff I was taking back, or credit. I credit for it for the stuff I was taking back. So I'm going to show off some of the things that I picked up. Definitely had a better success with some fiction this time. I found this one, Fantasies by George MacDonald. This is referenced a whole bunch in a bunch of different books that I've read, and it keeps coming up. I think I have some other George MacDonald, but I didn't have this, so I wanted to track it down and give it a read. George MacDonald lived 1824 to 1905. There's an introduction by C.S. Lewis in this edition of it. I don't remember a lot of it. This is, one of those, Tolkien is so ubiquitous in the fantasy genre, but this is like one of those pre-Tolkien fantasy writers, because that's like a moment apparently that we break the genre, as it were. Anyhow, I also, while I was out there, I was able to find all 6 of the books. I think that there's only the 6 of them, but these are Fred Saberhagen's Book of Swords. This is his first Book of Swords, second Book of Swords, third Book of Swords, first Book of Lost Swords, second Book of Lost Swords, and third Book of Lost Swords. Now, I always remember seeing these in my favorite used bookstore back in Bangor, Maine, when I was a kid. I'd see them around all the time. So, of course, when I decided I wanted to read them, I couldn't find them to save my life. That was a couple of years ago. I don't know what the connections are, but I had read Empire of the East, the trilogy collected in one volume, which I had owned a copy of since I was a kid, having bought it at that same used bookstore I was talking about. And I had read that a few years ago. And then Goodman Games put out the Empire of the East setting book for Dungeon Crawl Classics. And all I knew, I read Empire of the East, and I was like, well, this is really fascinating. And I was wondering, I've read some Saberhagen before. When I was a kid, I had read some of his other work. And I got reading about Empire of the East, and it turned out that there are connections to these Book of Swords, which I had always remembered from my childhood, but never purchased. So I decided to get them. I don't remember what the connection is to Empire of the East. I think it's a distant connection. I think it's one of these things where either these books are supposed to take place in the proto-history of that world or in the far future of that world, I think, maybe. And I believe there is some kind of connection with the villain. Like the idea that the main villain from the Empire of the East series, or one of the main villains, or maybe it was the lieutenant of the main villain. Anyway, some like evil wizard or something like that is maybe also in this series. Something like that. Anyway, I found them. I found all 6. I have actually, for a couple of years, anytime I've gone to a used bookstore, I've gone looking for them and haven't found any of them. So I found all 6 of them, and I was pretty jazzed about that. Still had, for some reason, all of a sudden now I cannot find the second collection of Glenn Cook's Black Company series, which used to be everywhere. It was in every bookstore all the time, and now I can't find the second trilogy in a collection, and I can't find pretty much any of Robert Asprin's Thieves' World books. Tons of his myth books, tons of those, but in a couple of years of looking for them, I've only managed to find two, and they're both a little later in the series, two of the Thieves World books. I don't know what's going on with those. They used to be staples of used bookstores. You go in, they were always there, tons of them. Anyway, now this was one that my wife picked up, but will serve us well. I think this is a tourist guide to New York City. This is 2018. Obviously, things have changed somewhat in the last few years, but this goes into detail on some neighborhoods. It sort of deep dives into some of the neighborhoods and such. Not all of those have changed. Maybe what individual shops or restaurants are there, because, unfortunately there have been a lot of restaurants that did not weather the pandemic well, plus skyrocketing rents. And that's what's killing DC right now. There's skyrocketing rents, and, established restaurants that have been there for 10, 15, 20 years are closing up because they can't afford these insane prices. But anyway, this should serve us well. I know we'll be in New York again relatively soon, but we go, I don't know, maybe every year, every couple of years we go up there, and I certainly would like to spend a little bit more time there and see some new sites. We frequently end up kind of close to Midtown because we frequently end up going to Broadway shows, and that's a lot of times why we're there. I'd like to branch out and see more. I certainly want to see more of Brooklyn. I haven't seen a ton. I've liked what I've seen. I have still not been to Queens. I have not been to the Bronx. I haven't been to Staten Island, but who cares? Anyway, I'd like to get out and see more of New York than what I've seen so far. That's what I'm getting at. Also got this 100 Things to See in National Parks. I know we've got a couple of books on the national parks, and I'd like to read up a little more on them, because I have blind spots in a lot of places. I mean, I guess we all do. When I think about history, my U.S. history was never my interest, so I have giant blind spots when it comes to U.S. history. I've learned a lot in the last few years, in the last 10 or so years. I've learned a lot more U.S. history. U.S. travel. I've never been super excited about the idea of traveling in a lot of the U.S. Something about the geography didn't interest me a great deal. Now I have managed to do some traveling in the U.S., much more than I did in my earlier years. I've now been to every state that touches the Atlantic Ocean and the Gulf of Mexico. Yes, every state that does that, plus a couple of extras that don't. But I want to see more of the national parks. That's what I'm getting at. And this book looks like a nice handy guide with some really interesting info and things to make sure that you keep your eye out for when you go to these parks. So that's going to be a goal, I think, in our future. We've been to a couple together, and I think she's been to many more than I have, but we've been to a couple together, and I know it's something that we want to do more of and try to do a little bit more traveling in the States. I'd love to I want to take the train out to Chicago and then do the California Zephyr, I think, from Chicago to San Francisco, if I remember right. I'd like to do that. Of course, there's Chicago to San Francisco, Chicago to LA. The Chicago to Seattle one doesn't look that exciting to me, honestly. But a couple of those train trips are trips that I really want to take. Going through the Rockies, because I've never seen the Rockies. I haven't been that far west. Anyway, I'd love to sometime try DC to New Orleans. Even though it's not always the most scenic, but some of it's pretty nice. Anyway, on with things that I picked up. And we move into some gaming material. I was a little nervous that I already had this, but I checked my shelf and I did not. This is Ars Magica Tribunals of Hermes. This is the Rome Tribunal. I really very much want to get all of the, I want to get a lot of the books from the 5th edition. This is from the 3rd. I want to get a lot of books from 5th edition. Excuse me. One take. Woo! But they're darn expensive. It's hard for me to justify spending like $30 a pop on these books, and there's probably like 20 or more that I'd like. $30 a pop on these books for a game that I haven't played in 25 years, and I don't know when I'm going to get a chance to bring it to the table. So in the meantime, when I spot one like this for $9.99, that's a little easier to handle. I got the Tribunal of Rome book, and while there, I also got this Pax Dei book. This is source book for the Dominion. I believe that's the Divine Realm, I believe. I think the terms have changed a couple of times over editions, but I believe this is essentially the handbook for the Divine in the game. The Divine ends up being very important. Of course, you've got the Infernal, the Divine, and the Fairy are all three realms that are very important when dealing with various stuff in Ars Magica. And then, of course, you have the Mundane Realm. Pardon me, a little afternoon coffee. That seems like a bad idea, but here I go. Yes. Nice and warm. It's quite chilly here. Anyway, continuing on. Lowlife. Dredged from the Muck by Andy Hopp. Looks like this. Honestly, I don't even know. I mean, other than the fact that it's a nice hardcover and it was cheap. As for Savage Worlds, which thank you, Robert. I recently got a copy of the newest edition of Savage Worlds. I'd never heard of it. I'd never seen it, but I flipped through, and graphically, it's just really interesting. It feels very 90s to me. Like, when I was looking through this, it reminded me a little bit of Hole, Human-Occupied Landfill. It reminded me of just some of the really weird, the stuff that was coming out, like before Neil Gaiman was a household name, that kind of weird stuff that I feel like kind of birthed Neil Gaiman, or at least birthed Neil Gaiman's popularity. People were digging this stuff, and then Gaiman's Neverwhere came out, and then, you know, American Gods and all of that stuff, that started coming out, and I think people were already primed because a lot of weird stuff like this. But this is not from that era. It's just, it reminds me of that era. This is, when was this made? Looking for the really tiny small print on this. 2005. So this is only from a few years after I was kind of out of gaming for quite a while. Anyway, I thought it just looked interesting and weird, and it looks like it might be a fun read. I don't know how I'd ever get this to the table, or if I would ever get this to the table. I don't feel like it's super easy to get bizarro worlds like this, you know, where it looks like your characters are like, I don't know, pieces of tofu and fungus and who knows what. But, you know, I'll give it a read. I'll check it out. It was super cheap. So, who knows? And, you know, who knows? Maybe there's a gem. Maybe there's some inspiration in here. That gets me thinking about, like, you know, GURPS Goblins. I remember had such an interesting visual, but whoever actually played that? Did anybody play GURPS Goblins? Maybe they did. Maybe there was like a whole sub thing, but I've never seen anybody talk about it after it came out. I have a copy of it. I think I still have a copy of it because it was just visually really interesting. But did anybody play it? I don't know. All right, up next, Thieves of Fortress Madagascar by Robert Connolly and Bob Bledsaw. This is a Goodman Games reprint of an old Judges Guild thing. Oh my gosh, D20 system. So, you know, this was like, this was D&D 3rd edition. They put it out as D20 and they made it open source, and everyone under the sun was doing D20 system stuff, including a whole bunch of things that made no sense using D20. And oh boy, I'll tell you what. And then going to McKay, like at least a third of the books on the shelf in their RPG section were old D20 source books and supplements and adventures and stuff. But anyway, This is, I believe, and I didn't read too deeply into it, but I believe that this is an old Judges Guild scenario that has been updated, maybe. I'll have to read it and find out. Um, yeah, adventure for 10 to 12, for levels 10 to 12. Do your heroes dare to enter the fortress Badabaskar? Deadly brigands, vicious cultists, dusty treasure, blah, 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 blah. I'll read it. I'll see if I can plug it into my interests in Dungeon Crawl Classics. You know, scrap system stuff because there's no way in hell I'm ever running D&D again. Certainly not 3rd edition. But there it is. And then Citadel of Fire. I hope I'm right. There was another thing of Citadel of Fire that was a direct reprint of an old Judges Guild D&D scenario. And what this looked like was maybe that adventure plus some other stuff collected. I couldn't tell for sure, but I went with the newer looking one with my fingers crossed that maybe was the case. Maybe I'm wrong. But like with this one, I will give it a read, see if it's something that I will want to have around for Dungeon Crawl Classics. If it is, it will stay on the shelf. If it isn't, it will go out the door. Next up, now this one I know is a reprint. In fact, I used to have a copy of Teagle Manor and I sold it, but this is the reprint, and it even has the nice map. What is this? This is another. Oh, like a player version of the map, and then the GM version of the map, and back. So, I don't know that. I don't know. I could maybe photocopy it and blow it up or something, but it's a pretty darn detailed map, and it's created again on the cover. Teagle Manor. This is another one of those classic ones. I thought this was by Jaquays, but I guess not. It's the old kind of primitive way of doing these scenarios. There's not a lot. It's just open the door. Here it is. G9 starving jackal pack nests in northeast corner. 1/2 hit dice. Stats. Boy. I1 incense smoke burns eyes. 2 to 12 hissing vehement black cat. Like what? Black cats. It's why I think of like a lot of old D&D. I mean, it's why so many video games were inspired by Dungeons and Dragons, because it feels like a video game. It's just open a door, some random crap, fight it, take the stuff. Next door, random crap, fight it, take the stuff. But if this has, again, some good bones, some stuff that I would rewrite what's in there and maybe have a reason for anything happening, or that kind of thing. Cool. And again, if I read through this and it turns out there's nothing in it that particularly interests me, then out the door it goes. But in the meantime, Teagle Manor, I remember this one kicking around. We'll take a look. We'll take a look and see. Up next, Fate Accelerated. I'm still fascinated by Fate. Fate came out of Fudge, if I remember right, and Fudge was actually a game system that I had really enjoyed. I liked. And then every time I was like, oh, Fate's really cool. It's come from that basic mechanic, and I think the basic mechanic is good. But whenever I pick up a Fate book, it's like, it seemed like whoever was doing new Fate games overcomplicated Fate to the point where it's like, why am I playing this? Why do I want to sit there and have to like filter every thought through a rule. And that's how it sort of felt. But Fate Accelerated feels like maybe they've taken it back to its core, to the base mechanic, which the base mechanic I really do think is a good base mechanic. So we'll see. It was cheap. I mean, original price is only $5. I paid $2.50 for it. But I've got it. I want to read it because I really do think Fate's got good mechanical bones. I just feel like everybody, not everybody, but certainly a lot of the ones that I have read, they take it and they really just ruin it by putting too much stuff into it. Anyway, this is one that I was excited to find. This is one of the. This was Atlas, right? I'm not crazy. Yeah, Atlas Games Cyberpunk Scenarios. I've been trying to track these down. I was hoping that Atlas would put them out as print on demand, but I don't know if they can because of various rights things and stuff. I'm sure there's something going on there. Or if they'd sell the rights to R. Talsorian and R. Talsorian could put them out on demand. I don't know, but I want to track these down, and this is the only one I've been able to find so far. So the Osiris chip for this is for Cyberpunk. I think 2020. It might be for 20. It might be early enough that it was for 2013, but I'm assuming it's for 2020. I don't know. But anyway, just really glad to find this little slice of the past, and I don't know. I think they did maybe 4 or 6 of them. And I would like to, at some point, try to track them all down. But certainly, I was excited to find that. And then the Trolls of Mistwood. This is a DCC scenario by David W. Fisher from Shinobi 27 Games. I know nothing about it. I literally just saw, cheap DCC scenario. I'll pick that up. I'll give it a read. Like with a lot of this stuff, if it looks like it'll be useful, I'll hold on to it. If it doesn't look like it'll be useful, it'll be going back in the box. But let's see. Ad for Crawl, fanzine. I like this map. Village map in the back here. So, yep, don't know. I'll give it a read. Pretty much grabbed it. I'm not quite sight unseen because I saw it, but without looking. And another Goodman Games. There were actually a bunch of Goodman-related things there. This is, and I hadn't heard of this one. This is the Random Esoteric Creature Generator. Actually, I feel like maybe somebody did tell me about this one at some point. Anyway, for classic fantasy role-playing games and their modern simulacra by James Edward Raggi the Fourth. Oh, that's the guy who does Lamentations of the Flame Princess. I think that's why I've heard of this. I think there's a newer version of this that's for Lamentations of the Flame Princess. Right. Okay. But this looks like it is basically a random generator for making strange monsters. And I like random generators. I've been finding them to be a great deal of fun for scenario design and prep for a game. I like sometimes using the random generators because it helps break your brain out of its usual patterns. I have things that I like and gravitate to, and so a lot of times my ideas might fold back upon themselves and be the things that I like and gravitate to. You roll on a random chart and suddenly you add even a little twist onto what you normally do, and it can really send your brain into a new direction. So anyway, I'll take a look at this at some point. I do like some random charts. So that's what I ended up getting. I think a pretty good haul overall. Very excited to add a little bit more Ars Magica to my collection, for a game that I can't seem to get anyone else interested in but myself. Again, we're talking about in-person games. I know I could run anything online. Isn't the exciting world of online great? But I am really trying to get back to playing games face to face with other human beings, because dagnabbit, as antisocial as I am, I would like to be a little social in some way again. So I'm really excited about the Osiris chip. I don't even remember if these were necessarily supposed to be very good. I want to read them. One day I'd really like to get Cyberpunk 2020 or Cyberpunk Red to my table. I don't know how much I love Cyberpunk Red, I'm going to be honest. I haven't read it yet, but the more I read it, the more I'm like, I don't know if maybe Cyberpunk 2020 would be more to my liking. But anyway, some cool stuff. I'm excited to one day read these books, because I'm having a devil of a time reading fiction lately because I don't commute to work anymore. And so who knows? Maybe in the new year I will not be working from home again, and maybe I'll have a commute again, and I'll get to reading fiction again, because I really am struggling with reading fiction while working from home. Anyhow, that's what I've got for today, and as has been made clear apparently in my last few videos, I have no idea when my next video is going to be coming. I don't have anything planned, but you never know. So, and also I don't even know when this one's going to post. So, usual stuff. Check the links below if you want to see my author page, if you want to check out my blog where I do reviews of some of these role-playing game stuff that you might see in these videos. Buy me a coffee, any of that sort of thing. It's all down below. Isn't that exciting? Like, subscribe, all of the various YouTube things that demands of us so that we are good and loyal servants to the corporation. Take care.